Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for holding on for just a few minutes as we were getting this webinar kicked off. My name is Kyle Butterfield, and I'm a member of the Wyoming Airports Coalition Board. I'm very pleased to welcome you and to recommence our virtual Lunch and Learn series. We've got a great one for you today, and this is in partnership with the Wyoming Department of Transportation. And we're going to be talking about a critical component of the upcoming and really, I guess, ongoing is a better way to put it, economic impact study that Wolpert will be providing to the state of Wyoming and working with each of you on as members of our coalition as airport stakeholders. Part of this economic impact study will include an important component to capture data and usage at each of your airfields. Many of you are familiar with it, but we're going to be talking about ADSB. We have several experts that are ready to go today, and I'm going to do a brief introduction, but also do a plug for the Wyoming Airports Coalition. Um, I feel that this education component and networking component is so valuable for us as airport operators, consultants, corporate sponsors, community members, and general aviation enthusiasts. So please utilize this as a chance to get to know folks. Please utilize your membership in the coalition because I know it's been very valuable for me, and I hope it's providing value to you as members. Our committee that's overseeing the Lunch and Learn series met this morning, and we've slated out our next few Lunch and Learns, and we're very excited to offer this on a monthly basis. Please plan for a December Lunch and Learn. And I'm going to just double check the date here, but we're looking at December 19th for our next installment. We know it's around the holidays. We thought it was a better idea to do it the third week of December instead of the 4th or 5th. As I know each of you will be enjoying time with family and celebrating the holidays. But please take time to join us on December 19th around the noon hour. And we're going to be very privileged to talk about incident response. We've recently had an airport that had an incident on their airfield, and they're going to talk about how they responded to it. And we'll have opportunity to really learn from them in how to engage emergency response, engage the federal agencies, communicate to the public, and also ensure that the stakeholders on our airfield know that we prioritize safety above all else. It'll be a great discussion, so please plan on that for December. Without further ado, let me introduce our participants today, and there will be several that come in throughout this Lunch and Learn webinar. We have a few from Wolpert, and we're very grateful for their partnership on this. Two of them are on the screen, and we also have a representative from 1200 Aero. And, you know, honestly, maybe it's best to let you gentlemen provide a brief introduction for yourselves. We'll also be hearing from AJ Schutzman throughout the webinar. He is involved with the Wyoming Department of Transportation and is very critical, as we all know, in working with us when it comes to our planning and our improvements. We also will have Bruce Ransom, who's the Airport Division Manager for Central Wyoming Regional Airport, and he'll have an opportunity to discuss. So with that, I'll kick it over to Mark, and it always feels weird to introduce somebody who's already on the line, and I can do such a poor job trying to speak about someone. So I'll let Mark, Trent, and Ivan provide just a brief introduction, and then we'll kick things off.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle, and thanks to you for inviting us and the whole WAC team for offering us the opportunity to speak with everybody here today. I'm Mark Hokenauer. I'm a planner for Wolpert, formerly J Aviation. I'll be serving as project manager for the overall economic impact study. I was heavily involved on the last one about 5 years ago, and I'm very excited to be working on this one again, working with Wyoming Airports and AJ there at WYDOT. Also on is Trent Holder. Trent, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Trent Holder, Senior Aviation Planner with Wolpert. Good to see you. Planner with the company. I've been doing this for about 15 years now and excited to talk about airport operations tracking with you.
Yeah, for sure. And also on is Ivan Vasquez of 1200 Aero, our partner for the project. Ivan, you want to say hello?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, or well, yeah, afternoon, everybody. Ivan Vasquez, 1200 Aero. I'm the founder and president. We are an airport operations tracking service operating at about 300 airports to date, helping several states with their airports data and operational data needs. Privileged to be here and ready to answer any questions you have in terms of how we log operations, service features, and also listening to your feedback and potential needs. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. Trent, I'm going to ask you to share the screen. You're going to be driving the slideshow. And as Trent pulls that up, I'll just say our agenda for today is to provide an overview of the economic impact study. Some of you might be familiar with the process. Many of you might not be. So that's our goal, is to kind of educate everybody here at the outset and get everybody excited about it. These studies are really a great opportunity to highlight the positive contribution of aviation and airports, and really tell the story of how airports and aviation improve daily life, not only through the numbers, quantifying things, but also just kind of connecting those numbers to, people through telling the stories. It's critical to make that connection for the average citizen. So, the prior study was published in 2020 based on 2019 figures. It ultimately put together a whole bunch of deliverables, lots of different reports and videos and all sorts of stuff. Going to do a lot of that again this year, and we'll get to that at the end of my portion of the slideshow. But again, as I said, we wanted to get everybody excited, get in front of WAC here. It's a great audience. Talk about the study and answer any questions you might have. So again, thanks to you guys and Kyle and AJ for putting this together. Trent, you want to advance? So first, just a little bit of background. As I mentioned, the last study was completed in 2020 using 2019 baseline information. So that was pre-COVID. This project today was initiated in October of this year. Data will be collected and analyzed through 2024 and 2025, with an anticipated completion sometime in 2026. Again, we are Wolpert, formerly J Aviation. That name might be a little more familiar to you. We wanted to throw that out there. You can go ahead and advance, Trent. Airports included. Long story short, same as last time, we've got 9 commercial service airports, 25 general aviation. All airports are public use airports with paved runways. Next slide. So just a high level, as high as we can get, what are the core steps in the study? First, we collect the data. Then we identify the direct impacts. Then we model multiplier impacts on those direct impacts. Those are also known as indirect and induced. We use the in-plan model to do that. And we document the total impacts, which is kind of the big answer for every airport and for the state. And then that 5th step, not only are we identifying the numbers, we are telling the story. So we identify how airports improve daily life for the average citizen by identifying qualitative benefits, who are the unique users, what are the unique services that airports enhance. Next slide. This study, just like the last one, will be conducted in 2 phases. Right now, we are in phase 1. Phase 1 will entail really that initial push of getting the surveys out there to start collecting the data. Many of you have already submitted the airport operations program form to kind of kick that off and get your information to Ivan and his team so they can get those systems out to you. The other big steps in phase 1 are getting passenger surveys out to the airports. So that's commercial passenger surveys for those 9 commercial airports. And then all 34 airports will get general aviation passenger surveys. We've got some screen grabs of them. They're pretty similar to the last effort if you were around for that. And then we also want to update the business tenants on the airports. So we will be sending you a list of tenants from the prior study 5 years ago, and we'll be asking airport managers to update that information for us, just to make sure we have all the most current points of contact for everybody. So that will lead us into phase 2. Then that will entail site visits to every airport, and we'll have interviews. We'll get around to talk to the business tenants. We'll do a manager survey, tenant surveys, as I mentioned, and we will replenish those passenger surveys as needed. Those passenger surveys would ideally be out in the field deployed for about a year. So we want to collect as much data as possible to get a really robust sample size. Trent, you can go to the next slide. Okay, digging into the passenger surveys just a little bit deeper. As you may recall, for commercial airports, we ideally would put those on the Wi-Fi, deploy them that way. So when travelers who are waiting to depart log onto your Wi-Fi, they're prompted to take the survey. It's optional, of course. Anybody can decline. We also encourage participation by putting out QR code posters out through the terminal or on a TV display. We also have the good old-fashioned, pen and paper method, for those who might not be technologically inclined. It's also important to capture their spending habits. So we will have printed copies. It will just require a little bit more help from you, the airports, to help get those out there and collect them and send them back to us. Similar thread for the general aviation pilots and passengers. We want to get those posters and paper copies out there. As you may recall, last time we sent an intern out to kind of hang out and interview passengers. That's a step we are not going to do this year, but just for perspective, we collected about 27,000 commercial passenger surveys last time and just under 1,500 general aviation surveys. So if we keep those out for a year, we should have a really good sample size. We've also got here in this brownish box here, these are our core questions that we ask. This helps us get to that answer of what is the economic impact from visitors coming into Wyoming, people from outside, bringing outside dollars in, spending it in Wyoming. We arrive at that answer by asking these questions. And we will also offer the opportunity to ask your own questions if there are really critical ones. So look for an email from us, our team, to start coordinating that, getting those surveys out there. The first step will be, hey, are there other questions you want to ask? Trent, next slide. Okay, so just kind of a economic impact 101 crash course recap here. So where do we look for impacts? We've got our activity categories on the left-hand side. We've got up to 5 activity categories. Some airports will have all 5. Obviously, a non-commercial airport won't have commercial visitor expenditures. Most airports have the other 4 categories, but we've got the management category. This is kind of the daily operations of the airport. We've got the business tenants, FBOs, and maintenance shops, and avionics, anything else, kind of selling services at the airport. Average annual capital investment. We look at the historic grant histories for each airport, and also ask the tenants, what kind of capital they've spent over the last 5 years, come up with an average, identify those impacts. And of course, I've gone into detail on the visitor impacts. So that's where we look for the impacts. And then the measures on the right side column, that's kind of how we quantify it. So we express employment in terms of FTEs, that's full-time equivalents. So 2 part-times equals 1 full-time. Payroll, spending, and annual economic activity. An easy way to think about economic activity, that's payroll plus spending. Just think of it as kind of dollars flowing into the local and state economy as a result of airport activity. So, identifying impacts in all of these categories, it really involves turning over every stone, every rock we can to find those answers. We aren't, starting at a high level and saying, okay, based on GDP or employments, this is what the answer should be. We really, get on the ground, talk to every business, every tenant, look at the data to build up the big answer piece by piece. So, that's the whole, mission of identifying direct impacts. We like to be able to point to the source for everything. Now, the one category where there is an exception is the general aviation visitors. As you know, at a non-towered airport, there's really no good feel for the number of true operations and especially visiting aircraft, where they're coming from, if they're actually true transient aircraft or if they're kind of local operations. So the airport operations program, with which Trent and Ivan are going to talk about in a few slides, that's where this study stands apart. It's really a groundbreaking thing for us to be incorporating ADSB technology into an economic impact study to directly enhance the results. So that's what's really cool about this. This is really a first of its kind study to have these systems out at every airport to, specifically to enhance that admittedly weak point in, the methodology for identifying that particular impact. So next slide. So just to recap the last study, again, this was 2019, pre-COVID, pre-inflation, all that stuff. 5 years on, so keep that in the back of your mind, but it's still a really big number from 5 years ago. Just under 22,000 total jobs, just under $1 billion in total annual payroll, over $1 billion in annual spending. And you sum those last 2 numbers to get the total annual economic activity. That's $2 billion. That's your big answer for Wyoming's total. You take all the airport's answers, add them together. That's the total for Wyoming. That's a big number, and that will change for this study. Again, we use an objective methodology, so I can't project what that'll be, but just given inflation, my intuition is it'll be a little bit bigger. The last bullet, $87.7 million in state and local taxes. That's another piece that we identify. So we take the direct impacts, and so employees that work at the airport, they take their income, and a portion of that, they spend their money in the local economy. Portion of that is sales tax. When visitors come to Wyoming, they spend money on services like lodging, food, retail, all that stuff. The sales tax, we're identifying that sales tax. The businesses at the airports, when they buy their supplies and materials, their sales tax on that. So we're identifying that. That's where that $87.7 million comes from. So that is money, directly benefiting the state and local government's coffers, so to speak. We can jump to the next slide. So just to kind of talk about how that $2 billion big answer, again, from the last study, and that's total. Remember that includes the multiplier impacts, and that is all the categories combined. So that's a little bit on airport, a little bit off airport. That $2 billion is spread across the 5 activity categories, according to this chart here. 60% is attributable to commercial aviation visitor expenditures. So that just kind of speaks to how critical it is that we, collect a lot of good commercial visitor surveys. That's why we want to get them up for a year, deployed on Wi-Fi systems at your commercial airports. Really get a robust, statistically valid sample size. That also allows us to do some fun analysis on, seasonality and stuff. So look to that. The second biggest category, 24% business tenants, just under 500 million in total annual economic activity. It's dwarfed by commercial visitor, but that's still a really big number. Same goes for the other 3 categories: management, commercial, general aviation visitor impacts, and capital improvement expenditures. All important, big pieces of the puzzle here. You want to jump to the next one? Okay, back to talking about what are you all going to get at the end of this. These little images here are from the last study. Obviously, we haven't made new reports and deliverables yet, but these will be refreshed, updated, look a little bit different than this. But these are the core elements. You get the technical report, which documents everything and shows the math. We've got executive summaries, which is maybe 8 to 12 page document kind of summarizing everything at a high level. Got individual airport reports, which are really beneficial for you all. Just a 1-2 page thing highlighting your particular airport's impact. We've got a fact sheet. That's kind of the executive summary of the executive summary, intended for those with really short attention spans, if they can only digest a page or 2. Methodology guide is another big one. I don't believe this was updated in the last study, but it was in the 2013-14 timeframe. So that's due for being updated. That's going to help you understand, how the numbers were, identified and arrived at, so you can help speak to the numbers a little bit better. We also have an online calculator that was developed last time. The goal is to update that. All of the, there's other things that are being defined right now. Not everything is finalized, but these are kind of the core elements that we're looking at. So there's other potential items. Videos were created last time. That's a potential deliverable as well this time. I would invite you to talk to AJ about what you liked, what you didn't like, or what deliverables could be more useful to you. That would really help us kind of define all those deliverables, in a year or so when we're ready to produce those. Next slide. So just a couple things to remember. A lot of this slideshow came, this content came from the last study, so this might be familiar lessons or talking points for you, but we wanted to just talk about the things that we like to say are important to remember when we're talking about economic impact studies. First of all, we do follow FAA guidance. It's an input-output model. We identify direct inputs to get the total. That's kind of a set thing. The other big thing is economic impact studies are a snapshot in time. So they do change. The last study's numbers are really only valid for that year. They reflect the conditions that were present at the time that the data was collected. That will be true for this study as well. We do have the online calculator to, estimate those changes and keep this more as a living document. Be flexible and change as the numbers do. But really, the base data was still collected in that, this year, next year. So still leans towards a snapshot in time. And again, we've got those COVID caveats here. The last study was pre-COVID. This study is, 4 or 5 years on from COVID. We aren't going to dig in deep on, okay, how things changed in Wyoming during COVID and how things have rebounded. We may ask a few high-level questions on that and talk about that at a high level, but we're not going to do a deep, autopsy on that sort of topic. And again, some of you have, stated, and we hear this a lot about economic impact studies. There's no way there's that many jobs at an airport. And when you're talking about the total jobs and total answer, that is true. They are not on the airport. So another important thing that we like to do is identify and call out those on airport direct jobs. So if you do drive out to the airport, you will see, that number of people working at the airport rather than jobs that were created elsewhere. So that is, do we have another slide, Trent? I don't recall. Okay, so that is my overview of the overall economic impact study. I'm going to pass it to Trent. He's going to talk about the airport operations program. Many of you have already signed up for this. Thank you. So Trent, you want to take it away? We will have an opportunity for questions at the end if you have questions for me or Trent, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Mark, you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Cool. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us during your lunch. I'm going to talk about the airport operations program a little bit. Actually, what the game plan is I'm going to do airport operations program, a little ADSB crash course, and then do a quick overview of the 1200 Aero dashboard, just to get you excited about it. Then I'm going to hand it over to Bruce from Riverton. He's going to talk about how he's used that data in the past. And then at the end, if there's time left, we can do Q&A. So if you have questions about 1200 Aero, the dashboard, the features, any of that stuff, please submit it. And after Bruce's presentation, we'll get into that, and Ivan can really do a detailed answer on stuff like that. So sound good? I can't see anybody, so I just imagine everybody's putting their thumbs up. All right. So Mark talked about the economic impact study, and the airport operations program is a sub-component of that. We are trying to get accurate and detailed operations data for all the airports in Wyoming. And as he alluded to, when you don't have a tower, that's really tough. And almost all the airports in Wyoming don't have a tower. So that's where we come in with this operations program and ADSB and 1200 Aero, which I'll get into. By doing a statewide program and collecting data for a year, it allows us to do highly detailed, accurate airport level analyses, and also look at statewide analyses. How do the airports in the state interact with one another? Is there a medevac flight leaving Riverton going to another airport? Can we track that? Can we see how the state acts as a whole? So that's something that's kind of groundbreaking and new that we're going to be able to do with this data. And the most exciting thing for all of us is that WYDOT's paying for 2 years. So for 2 years, you get this service for free. After 2 years, there will be an opportunity for you to continue with 1200 Aero. And you can always talk about pricing and whatnot with Ivan when you meet with him during your sign up and participation. So up here on the corner is a giant QR code. Please scan that, please sign up. As of this morning, we had 16 of 34 airports signed up, so we're almost halfway already. Okay. Really quick, what's the process for signing up? You hit the QR code, you do a little survey, you give us some information, then we set up a 20-30 minute meeting with Ivan and his team to confirm some details. Your shipping address, that kind of stuff. what's expected of you as the airport. You receive a box of equipment and you have to install it. It's a small antenna there that you can see on top little image. Can you see my mouse moving around or no? You can? Sort of, okay. So it's a 30-inch antenna that you have to mount. You want it to be able to see the airfield, all your runway ends. It's line of sight based. And then you also have to run a cable and provide Ethernet or internet and power to a small receiver box. So that's really all that's expected of the airport and what's what we're going to be asking you to do. Once it's up and running, it just sits there and is passive and you get all the benefits. So, okay. Now ADSB 101, and ADSB is the primary method that we're doing airport operations tracking. So ADSB stands for Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. Those are big words that you don't need to know. So just think of it as ADSB. It's similar to the old MODES transponders. You know, you can think of it as like an upgraded transponder. It's a little box in an airplane that shoots out radio signals. That's all it is. And then those radio signals go to different places. And this is a very simplified version of what ADSB is. So if there's any pilots online, please know this is simplified. But the radio signal that shoots out from your airplane contains the latitude and longitude. So it's using GPS, your altitude, your ground speed, your call sign. So it has some really useful information. And if two airplanes have ADSB, they can talk to one another. And that's awesome because that means if you're in a cockpit and you both have ADSB, you can use this for in-air avoidance. I mean, that's why the FAA has pushed ADSB. It's a safety factor, right? I mean, I've been in the cockpit flying and use that nonstop, especially when you're in a busy airspace. It's really, really beneficial. But you can also put a little antenna and receiver on the ground and get those same radio signals. And so that's all we're doing here. And since we get latitude and longitude and altitude, we know when an airplane isn't just flying by, but we also know when they land and take off. And also, you know, where they go on the ground. So we can see usage of ramps, taxiways, connectors, that kind of thing. ADSB is equipped in almost 100% of jet planes and turboprops in the country. So essentially anything, you know, bigger than a PC-12 or King Air is equipped. There's a little bit of a gap with smaller planes. So, you know, your single engine pistons, about 55% of those across the country have ADSB. But we know a big chunk of that 45% that aren't equipped don't necessarily fly. So we're using ADSB and it's really great and really comprehensive, but it's also going to miss a little bit. So we're going to be asking you guys to help fill in gaps. So if you know you have local planes who don't have ADSB, flight schools, whatever, we're gonna try to identify that gap. So, okay, really quick, where do you have to have ADSB? In 2020, January 2020, FAA put out a mandate and said if you're flying in certain types of airspace, your airplane has to have ADSB out. Class A, Bravo, Charlie, Mode C, Vale, and some Class C. What does that mean for Wyoming airports? Well, there's no Bravos or Charlies in Wyoming. Those are the big airports. And you can see on this kind of pixelated image here, Wyoming is in the middle. Down to the south, we've got Denver, Bravo, airspace. Over on the side, we've got Salt Lake. And then that little green circle at the top is Billings. They have Charlie airspace. So if you were going to fly into any of these airports, you have to have ADSB. It's required. And if you try to get in there without it, you get in trouble. They don't like that. And also, if you're flying in Class A, which is 18,000 feet up, you have to have it. And again, going back to the jets and the turboprops are equipped, well, they're the only ones who are flying that high, so it makes sense. So essentially, your single engine pistons who don't fly very far, don't have to have it. So it's totally allowed in Wyoming. There's no mandated airspace, you know, under 18,000. You're totally allowed to fly your little plane and do your touch and goes, and no big deal. So makes sense? Mark, give me a thumbs up. Thank you.
You're doing
Okay.
great.
So that's the ADSB overview. That's the Airport Operations Program overview. And now I'm just going to do some quick detailing of some of the features of 1200 Aero. So after you sign up, you install your equipment, you get a login, and you get access to a dashboard online. And it has a ton of features. One of which is a live map where you can look at your airport, see what the planes are doing, where they're going, click on them, get extra details. And you can also see how many operations you've had today, how many landings, how many takeoffs, you know, what were your busiest hours. And that's information that we like, but it's also information that you as an airport can use, you know, for things like staffing. So similar to a FlightAware, if you have that app on your phone, right? The 1200 Aero also records audio. This is one of my favorite features about it. This says ATC audio, but if you don't have a tower, it's just your, you know, your CTAF. And any transmissions that are recorded, or any transmissions at your airport, are recorded and stored for a year. So if you have some sort of runway incursion or incident or near miss or whatever, you can go in, pick your day, and load and listen to all the transmissions, right? So is that from an airport management perspective, this is a really nice feature. Airspace Relay allows you to go in and pick any day and time and look at the traffic that happened over the last 12 months. So again, if there was some sort of incident or something happened, you know, you don't know as it's happening live, you don't know until an hour later, a day later, whatever. So this allows you to go back, see what's going on, and also see, you know, if you had a special event of flying, kind of replay the airspace and see what was going on for that. The airport utilization statistics. This is, as a planner, probably my favorite part, which is embarrassing to say, but it gives you really detailed operations data. This is a quick summary of the operations by month, and Bruce is going to get into this a little bit, but you can download the data and it's extremely detailed. So if you're doing any sort of planning, study, master plan, ALP update, any sort of, you know, fleet mix for pavement, this stuff is great. And as part of the setup with Ivan and 1200 Aero, you geofence part of your airport. So if you have areas, you know, pavement areas of interest that you want to have a better idea of how busy they are. So maybe you have an FBO ramp, and it's really just FBO traffic, and you want to see how many planes go through there. You can do that. You can set up a geofence over specific areas and get detailed information. And also you get detailed information about runway end usage. You know, which runways are people using? Does it change during, you know, inclement weather, stuff like that. And finally, the user management. So this has come up on some of our calls. When you get set up, you can come in and by default create up to 10 accounts. So there's kind of two different levels. There's the manager, full access, and then there's also the airport staff, just live data. So, you know, if you're the airport manager, you have ops staff, admin, whatever, and you want to give them access, you totally can. No big deal. So. All right, so that's my spiel. Now I'm going to give it over to Bruce. Is he here? Bruce, are you here?
I see him.
There we go.
Bruce, you ready? There we go.
Okay. We're trying to thank you for letting us actually do a presentation here. We've been actually kind of beta testing this for the last 14 months. And so we wanted to kind of drill down a little bit and just kind of show you how we use the data and what the data looks like from an airport here in Wyoming. There are a number of reports that you can obviously use. One of the ones that we use on a regular basis, and we're going to use for this example, was just a monthly report for October of 2024. So we present these standard reports to our board every month, and it gives them a really good overview of actually what's happening at the airport on the commercial and the GA side. And I mean, this information is absolutely incredible. I mean, it was information that was really hard to get prior to actually using the system. So, you know, we use it for board meetings, talking to local politicians. We're currently going through a master plan. This has aided greatly in the development of that. And I think if your airport is one where you actually run your own FBO, this is going to be really critical data. So just going to kind of go down here just a little bit and show you what we present on a standard report. So obviously we've got our operations for the month, which was the takeoff and landings. It shows you the go-arounds, the overflights. You have a bar graph for every single day, which also breaks up those categories. Since this was just off of a PDF printed report, you know, on your live view, if you take your cursor and you move it over top of any one of those data points, it expands it out so you can look at the hourly. All the information is incredibly easy to use, and everything is downloadable even from the charts. At the bottom chart there where the weather conditions are, the blue line, for example, is the wind for that period. And again, moving your cursor over to any individual day, it'll break it down to minutes. We've got the average temperature, which is the red line. And then if there are any NOTAMs or MEDAR reports, that's the gray lines. So there was obviously weather those days. So just really, really helpful information. Next slide, please, Brent.
Hey, Bruce, real quick, we didn't talk about this before, but could you talk about the operations counting that this airport did prior to this and then the difference you found after installing this?
Okay, yeah, basically we were trying to do everything by hand. So literally anytime an aircraft landed, somebody that was close to the office, we ran in and literally wrote it on a whiteboard. And when they took off, we were trying to do as much as we possibly could manually, and it was very cumbersome. And I know once we got the system and then we kind of went back and compared what we were recording to what we were now recording with the Aero system, I mean, we were probably off 30%, I would say, in accuracy. So this has been just incredible for us.
Yeah, I will say it was actually, I think you were estimating about 2,000 annual operations, and now you're at like 8,000. So it was a very, very nice increase. And when you don't have anybody at the airport after hours, you miss a lot of flights.
Right. And I think you'll see that probably when we get on to the last of the slides where that is extremely valuable to an airport. Okay, so some of the other data that you're going to get is your operations by runway. We've got two runways here. We've got our main runway, and then we have a crosswind. So this breaks down the number of people that are using your runways. On this particular example, we have operations by runway landings. You can also put in takeoffs. We just didn't do it for this chart, but that's something you can manipulate these charts a little bit too. So we have your top origin airports. So when they leave here, you can have where they're going and you know where they're coming from, which is also really valuable data. Your operations by category, these are the type of aircraft. It breaks it down, who's using your airport. The operations by type. So we've got, in that bottom, we've got air taxi, commercial, and, sorry, I gotta put my glasses on here. Your general aviation. So this breaks it down to a percentage of your total operations, which again is extremely helpful. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the types of aircraft for the month. So basically breaking it down to the sizes, the operations by engine type, piston, turboprops. I know if you were running an FBO, this would be extremely valuable information in calculating fuel. And again, this is a monthly report. You can run these annual. You can break this data down however you want to see it. Your local versus itinerant flights breaks that down. Training operations, how much training is going on at your airport. Flight school, this would also be very good information if you're running a flight school. IFR versus VFR flights. And this one really got us, at least at our airport, the after hours operations. We had no idea how much we were missing and how busy the airport was when obviously we're untowered. And so in the later part of the evening, we had no idea how busy it was. So that was really, really good information to capture. Next slide, please. And again, as you know, Trent was saying on the overview, this breaks it down by operations, by day of the week, your hours, your landings and takeoffs by month. You can see the red bar there is about your average, which is great information. Historical data, your busiest days on record. So this is just a standard report in a nutshell. Some of the things that I think were probably the most valuable to us, and we kind of alluded to it, Trent, was on the next slide, please, which is a 5010 form. So this gives you a running up-to-date 5010 form. I know most airports, and us included, this was really hard information to try to calculate at the end of the year as you're updating your 5010. This gives you a running tally up to the day. So all of this information is there. And again, Trent, what we kind of alluded to at the end of the year, we were thinking we were probably doing 2,000-3,000 operations. And I think in October, we were at 6,911. So much more accurate data, especially for planning. So just make one more quick note, which I think Trent was really a key feature was when you were talking about your Unicom being recorded, having that data recorded. I know one of the things that we use that for a lot is in winter operations. When we have a pilot that gives us a friction report, we have data from the pilots that are landing to correspond to what we're saying the conditions on the runways are. And so that has been really valuable. And then if, like you said, if something happens, we've got data of what happened. So we love the system. We're going to continue using it. This has really helped us. So that's all I have.
All right. Well, thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Trent. Here's our contact information. AJ, myself, Trent. Bruce's contact information isn't listed. He's not part of the formal study, but he'd be happy to talk to you if you guys have questions for him on, practical day-to-day use. But thanks again, Bruce, for demoing that. So just a heads up, we will be contacting you as, kind of the immediate next steps to coordinate more data collection. Here's the QR code to get signed up for the airport operations program. I also put the direct link in the chat. Somebody asked for that. But again, we will be reaching out. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us, but we do have your contact information and we will be reaching out to you to bug you very shortly. Visits aren't anticipated until 2025, so that's our heads up. Anyway, Kyle, thanks for the opportunity to share.
Mark, Kyle, I'll go ahead and jump in here and we'll just kind of run through the Q&As that are out there right now. And then maybe a question for Ivan here. So it was asked if you already have ADSB at your airport, maybe another receiver, if you need to sign up for this. We are specifically paying for 1200 Aero so that all airports are on the same dashboard and we can get statewide reports on that as well. So hopefully we can get you to install that 1200 Aero system in that. Not only will it be used as part of this study, but it will also be used to justify pavement projects at your airport there. So there is a little bit of an incentive there for you to do that. It was also asked about the installation, if the airports would incur the cost to install it and deliver power and internet to it. We are asking the airports if you have the capability to self-install. I think Bruce could speak to it. It took his operations staff all of like 20 minutes to install it.
There's one more question from Rick. Will this show blocked aircraft as well? So I thought maybe, Ivan, do you want to handle that question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of, I would say, our top 5 questions. Operators, as some of you may know, have 2 options when it comes to blocking their aircraft's identity with ADSB. At its lowest level, there is something called subscriber-based blocking, whereby an operator can selectively control whether, for example, FlightAware or FlightRadar24 or any of your public tracking sites allow to disclose their airplane's identity. The other and more restrictive level of blocking is called FAA level blocking, whereby operators simply indicate that they don't want to be tracked by anything other than the FAA themselves. Where in that way of operation, the FAA issues a special transponder code for that airplane. So essentially, somebody like obviously an avionics technician would replace the airplane's transponder identity, which essentially breaks the relationship between what we see with our antenna off the air and the entry that's reflected in the FAA database. Essentially, it breaks their relationship that allows us to see who that airplane is. So with those 2 ways of blocking in mind, we can I can say subscriber level blocking is always, I mean, those operators will always be seen in 1200 Aero. So it will be very common for you to observe that when a business jet lands, you're going to be able to see its identity on 1200. But if you go and try to look it up on FlightAware, they'll be blocked. However, and this actually corresponds to the vast majority of blocked tail numbers. If the operator is blocking at the FAA level, then neither us nor technically anybody will be able to tell what the identity of that airplane is. We will still show you a landing and you will still see kind of a generic airplane icon as the airplane lands at your airport. We will still count that as a landing, but we will not know what type aircraft it is. We will not know its maximum takeoff weight, operator, etc. So as of last summer, there were 3,000 blocked FAA level block tail numbers in the US out of a fleet of about 300,000 plus aircraft. So it's still a relatively small percentage.
And Ivan, you wouldn't know the origin of where that aircraft, if it's blocked at the FAA level, you still don't know where it came from.
Yeah, there's a chance we'll still know the flight origin and destination
Mhm.
From the flight plan, or if that airplane happens to have taken off from an airport that's covered by our network, so pretty much anywhere within the state or any airport out of the 300 plus airports we serve, we will still know their origin. However, again, we will not know its tail number and any other attributes about it.
Okay, great. Got another question for you, Ivan. Bruce asks, how is weather data gathered?
We have technically four weather sources. Out of the box, we have a generally available NEXRAD weather layer that every airport has access to. So this is your NEXRAD weather source, which is available if you were a pilot when you use ForeFlight, or as a regular customer when you go to any kind of weather tracking site. It's the very same layer based on weather radar. If you're a pilot, you'll know that that data source is typically delayed about 5 to 10 minutes, so it tends to trail actual positions of those precipitations or precipitation weather. So that's one. Again, it's available for every user. And then we have a set of predictive weather services, which do cost extra since they are not provided by us, but are delivered by companies dedicated to aviation weather. And they include recent lightning strikes, the location of lightning strikes, or the likely location of lightning within the next 2 hours. There's also something called the weather airport weather impact, which is essentially something akin to the weather briefing for the airport that shows you what's going to be the weather like in the remaining hours of the day. So it indicates the direction and intensity of weather that's going to affect the airport's operations. And finally, about 6 different weather layers that aim to predict surface wind, surface visibility, mountain obscuration, and other things. And all of them, again, are predictive in nature. So that is kind of a comprehensive description of that question.
All right, sounds quite robust. It's more than just going to weatherchannel.com or something.
Yeah.
Another question for you, Ivan, while you're here. Does this system pick up both of the common ADSB frequencies?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Since our service focuses primarily on GA airports, for years we have covered both bands of ADSB. For those of you who are not familiar, there are 2 types of ADSB in the US. One is 1090 megahertz, which is what the type of ADSB emitted by pretty much the vast majority, I would say 90% of aircraft today. Without a doubt, aircraft that are designed to go into Class A, essentially your turboprops, your jets, and modern piston aircraft, they will all be equipped with 1090 megahertz type of ADSB. And then UAT, which operates in 978 megahertz, is a type of ADSB that's designed for being backwards compatible, for allowing backward compatibility for older aircraft to become compliant with the 2020 mandate. So our receiver picks up both and quantifies operations for both.
Very good. Thanks, Ivan.
You're welcome.
I don't see, oh, we just got another one from Paul. Can we have our existing ADSB and then add 1200 Aero without them interfering with each other?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And this is, yeah, another frequently asked question. Since ADSB receivers are just that, receivers, you can have, I mean, at large commercial service airports, there are literally hundreds of them. The only thing worth noting is that just given the physics of radio frequency reception, if you have another antenna at the airport, just make sure that, and we'll discuss this during our planning meeting. We need to ensure that our antenna is at least a few feet away from other antennas, even if those are just ADSB antennas, because if you put two antennas next to each other, you'd be surprised they actually conflict with each other. But again, as long as there are at least 3 feet of separation among them, you can have any number of antennas at the airport.
All right, great. Thanks, Ivan.
Absolutely.
I don't see any more open questions. Kyle?
Well, I
I'll take
want to
it.
just say thank you again to our great partnership with WYDOT Aeronautics. We appreciate all you're doing to support aviation and airports in the entire state of Wyoming, and also helping us with our Lunch and Learn series. We also are very grateful to have our corporate partners participate in this. So thank you to Wolpert and 1200 Aviation, Mark, Trent, Yvonne. Thank you so much. The information's been very helpful. And thanks to all of you for attending. We've got great attendance today, and we just hope to continue forward. Again, please plan on attending our December Lunch and Learn series. This will be very helpful to all of us as community members and airport operators as we discuss the importance of incident response. Obviously, we're getting into the winter season where the likelihood of having some type of incident on our airfields increases. And it's important that we pool our information and our resources so that as a state, we can focus on the best practices to keep our stakeholders and travelers safe, but also to respond when instances do occur. With that, I'd like to defer and allow our president, Devin Brubaker, to close out our Lunch and Learn series. We're so grateful to have him on with us today. And Devin, please feel free to address us and close us out.
Absolutely. And thanks, Kyle and team. Great presentation. Look forward to working with you all to help carry the message forward for Wyoming airports. I'll maybe do a little bit of a shameless plug here of how critical this information is for your Legislative Affairs Committee, as we are working with WYDOT and we're working with the legislature to try to secure additional resources for airports, whether that be air service or infrastructure funding. Having the most robust set of data with accurate numbers that we can get out of this study will help us carry that message forward in Cheyenne and also even in DC. So really appreciate WYDOT's partnership here. Appreciate working with Wolpert and 1200 Aero to move this forward. And as Kyle stated, we sat down as a board and really focused on how can we provide membership value to our members. And these webinars, these lunch and learns are part of that. You'll be noticing as we enter into the new year, some new opportunities for our airports and our members to become more engaged with the coalition. So stay tuned for that. We look forward to rolling out some new initiatives, new website, new membership platform that'll all be rolling out here shortly after the new year. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I don't want to take any more of your time. I appreciate over 50 people joining this call today. So great job with that, and look forward to seeing you all soon. I will not be able to join you all on December 19th, unfortunately, but look forward to seeing the video from that webinar. In the meantime, have a very happy Thanksgiving, a safe holiday season. And if I don't talk to you sooner, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So thanks and have a great one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.